I don't believe in a future where it's about recreating technical alternatives for the third-party cookie. Consumers don't expect to end up in numerous identity graphs of ad tech companies they have never heard of. So let's not go into that direction, but focus really onto the ones that have that first-party relation with the consumer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Identity Architects, the podcast that spotlights the incredible leaders in the media industry who are shaping the future of data-driven advertising. I'm your host, Ben Cicchetti, and this week I had the opportunity to sit down with Toon Coppens, Director of Advertising Data and Identity at DPG Media. Together, Toon and I discussed the media landscape in Belgium and the Netherlands, the ongoing deprecation of third-party cookies, the rise of first-party data, the hot topic of retail media, and much, much more. Before we jump into that conversation, this is your reminder to hit that subscribe button so that way you'll always be the first to know when the latest episodes of Identity Architects drop. But without any further delay, here's my conversation with Toon. Hi Toon, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Ben, thanks for having me.
No, I'm super excited for this conversation, and I think we have a ton to cover off. But for anyone who doesn't know you and may not be familiar with you, can you give us a quick introduction to yourself and to DPG Media?
Yep, for sure. So I'm Toon Coppens, 45. I'm Belgian. I work at DPG Media 6 years now. I'm responsible for data, identity, and artificial intelligence for the advertising part of DPG Media, both for Belgium and the Netherlands. I'm actually an electrical engineer from education. Went through Alcatel-Lucent, the telecom world, into then more and more the marketing and media world, and so now since 6 years working at DPG Media. And DPG Media, for the people not knowing it, it's the largest media company both in the Netherlands and Belgium. We are also active in Denmark. We have a turnover of about 1.8 billion euro. It's a privately owned company. It has around 6,000 employees, and we're active in what we call 5 different business lines. So we are active in radio broadcasting in Netherlands and Belgium. We're active in publishing, news media in the 3 markets. We're active in magazines. We do television broadcasting in the Belgian market. And we also have a lot of what we call online services, which are more the kind of comparison sites. And in total, we have around 90 brands across the 3 markets. But that evolves a lot because there is a lot of acquisition made all the time.
Amazing. We've definitely got a lot to cover off then, because that all sounds super exciting. But we're going to start the way that we always do, which is with a few quick-fire questions, just to get to know you a little bit better.
Yep.
And we're going to start right at the beginning. So what is your earliest memory of advertising?
Well, actually, the first memory of advertising is the launch of commercial television in Belgium. And that was actually in 1989. It was the first commercial broadcaster, VTM, which launched at that time. Previously, we only had the public television. So from then on, we had a second channel from a commercial station. And actually, I was 9 years back then. And little did I know that actually today, I would work for the company owning VTM 35 years later. And so we are now celebrating 35 years commercial television in the Belgian market. And so VTM is one of the brands which is inside the DPG Media family.
That's amazing. That's a full circle kind of moment there then.
Yeah, indeed, for sure.
So I guess speaking of your career, what was then your first job in either advertising or marketing?
Yeah, on advertising solutions, it was, I think, back in 2010, 2012, working at Alcatel-Lucent. So it was more known as a telecom company that was going into different kind of markets, applications. And it was an advertising service supporting SMS-based advertising, targeted advertising for Middle East and African markets. And so the concept was that telecom providers could provide their consumers free SMS and call reductions on the telecom bill if they would allow targeted SMSs to be sent. And so it was a kind of opt-in system. You, as a consumer, for instance, in Egypt, had to say, "Yes, I want to get targeted ads," and then based on your location and your interests, you would get targeted ads from Adidas and so on towards you. So it was a really target advertising services, but before any GDPR or like kind of world at that time.
Interesting. So I guess if you look back at that time and knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself when you were just starting out in your career?
Huh, that's a good question. When I started working, I started at Alcatel, and that was the days of the first video on demand services, IPTV, digital television. And I've been working for 6 years on the digital TV platforms at Alcatel. Afterwards, my advice would be today to uh, quicker shift jobs and to get more kind of different flavors. You're young, you're coming into the market, and to have like different flavors from yeah, business development into technical jobs into marketing, and to have like yeah, more a feeling of like the full market, and also move quicker into media. Actually, today I'm now 10 years into media companies, and it's really like the atmosphere in a media company where you have like the combinations of love brands together with like value chain transformations, a lot of reach available, etc. Just a very exciting kind of environment to work in.
Yeah, I can imagine. And obviously, you mentioned 10 years in the media industry. What is it that you love about what you do right now and the industry that you're in?
Yeah, on one side, a domain which evolves very rapidly, yeah, like the ongoing digital transformation that's really big into media in the past, first on everything which was publishing, but then afterwards television, video. You see all the kind of new companies coming up, and then all of a sudden you have a subscription video on demand with Netflix and Disney, but then they also start launching ad supported services. Vice versa, we have been provided free TV services for years, and now we started providing advertising video on demand services. But now also we also have hybrid video on demand services where you start to pay for not getting ads, and it's kind of this evolution, which is a mix of technology, privacy, new market entrants, which really makes it like yeah, really fun to be in. And on the other side, and that's also important, it always needs a kind of a raison d'être, a reason to be in the market. And for us is that yeah, everything what we do, even on targeted advertising, you know that you're supporting this, that you're setting up all these targeted advertising solutions, because at the end this is sponsoring, this is supporting qualitative journalism. It's thanks to advertising that all people get access for free to qualitative journalism. And this is important because if that's not there anymore, yeah, then you end up with fake news, hate speech. You see what's happening in a lot of countries in the world, and then you know it's so important to have independent quality journalism. And thanks to advertising, this is something that can thrive and still exist. So therefore, it's really important to continue innovating on targeted advertising, finding solutions to yeah, make sure that ads can support actually this the whole domain of journalism.
Yeah, it's so important to have something both obviously that you're good at, something you love, but also something with purpose.
Yeah,
And I
indeed.
think you've really summed it up really nicely there. So one of the things that we're obsessed with within the advertising industry is the concept of identity, meaning the ability to identify individuals across devices, across platforms, and so on and so forth. But how would you explain quite a technical term to a 10-year-old?
Good question. I'm not having 10-year-olds anymore. I am having now kids of 17 and 19 years old. So they're all into this space already for years, and they understand very well like the exchange which is there for getting free content in exchange for. But if you have to explain it, I wouldn't focus on the identity part, but I would focus really on the relevance, and make the analogy with the real world. I think if in the real world you're entering a shop for the third time, buying, I don't know, candies in a candy store, then after the third or the fourth time it seems like very logic that you're being greeted, maybe suggested some new kind of flavors, maybe you get some discount suggestions and all these kind of things, and it's happening in the real world and everybody finds that very natural and normal. And I think that's also, that relevance is something that we also want to bring online, because you also want to bring that same relevance over there. And therefore, we would like to be able to identify you, to know that, this is the third or the fourth time you came in, but without being creepy, because that's the other angle. I think what we have been doing maybe the last 15 years in online advertising is that it became creepy, because if you, after you went into the candy store, you went into the shop next to it, you're not expecting that shop to know what you have recently bought at the candy store. You
Mm.
also don't expect them to know you if it's the first time you're entering that shop. And so, if you take that analogy of the real world, and we always internally at DPG Media say, like, let's try to explain it to your mom. And if you can explain it to your mom and it sounds like natural, then we are doing the right stuff. If it sounds creepy, yeah, we should just forget about it. That's kind of the analogy that we try to take internally.
Yeah, I like that. I like that kind of a creepy barometer as to how appropriate it is, but also it's bringing it back to real world and the kind of the consumer, which should be at
Yeah,
the heart of everything we do, really.
indeed.
So, what keeps you awake at night?
Well, recently, actually, for the last 2 years, something I never would have expected, but we have a data management solution, DPG Media Data Lab, which is created for both Belgian and Dutch markets, which advertisers can create their own bespoke audiences and so on. And the front end of this platform is created in Kiev, in the Ukraine, so by a partner company of us. And so we have been working with those people over there for, meanwhile, I think like more than 3 years in
Mm.
total on different projects. And in the last 2 years, yeah, these people, they are going through, yeah, really horrendous times. We have had calls with them while they had an air raid alarm on the background and all these kind of things. People had to flee their homes, had to go into other areas of Europe. And so it's really like, certainly in the first week, we had calls with them one day before then the Russians entered. It was like, no, no, nothing is going to happen. And the next day it can all shift in a split second. The next day it was like, what's happening here? There we didn't have any contact in like 2 weeks. And then afterwards, now again they are working for us full time. And we have a lot of respect for what those guys are doing. And so at the end, we hope that they all keep well, that it can end very soon for them, and that they can get back to their normal lives, actually.
Yeah, it kind of puts everything into context and
For sure.
perspective when
Yeah,
you're
indeed.
dealing with that. I can imagine. So, what inspires you?
A lot of things. I'm an engineer from education, so I'm very open also in tech kind of things. But I would say on a personal level, um, what endurance athletes can do. It's really like so inspiring. People that do this long distance running, etc. It's really like, okay, it inspires me to also try to uh, get sportive and do this kind of thing. On the professional level, we have a lot of interactions with the European Publisher Council, a lot of interactions with other publishers in Europe. And one of the things that inspires me is what's happening in the France and the UK markets on retail media, and like the kind of cooperations happening over there between media companies and retailers. Also, where InfoSum is supporting the likes of Channel 4 and ITV. With some great things happening there. It's not yet happening in the Belgian and Dutch market, and so that's something that for now is an inspiration, because we would like to replicate this as soon as possible also in our local markets, Belgium and Netherlands.
Yeah, I think you very effectively tease some of the content that we're going to dive into a little bit later
Yeah,
on.
for sure.
But before we kind of dive into some of the deeper topics that we're going to cover off, can you give our listeners who may not be as familiar with the industry's landscape in the Netherlands and Belgium, can you just give us a bit of an update on the status quo in the industry in general and how well prepared the industry is for the cookieless future?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's, of course, working in three markets, but concentrating on two, Belgium and the Netherlands. We have a little bit, and DPG Media is a little bit different in the both markets. In Belgium, we have a lot of focus on television, radio, broadcasting, video on demand, connected TV, etc., for which I would say the full evolution into cookieless has been less impactful. Um, while in the Netherlands, where we are primary a publisher, a very big publisher, of course there is a much more impact. And that's also something that we see, like a difference in both markets. We see in the Netherlands like a little bit more kind of emphasis already today, a little bit more focus on cookieless and everything happening there. In Belgium, it's somewhat slower now in both markets, and that's a little bit different than the rest of Europe or the bigger countries like France, UK, etc. There already has been a lot of consolidation on the media side, meaning that there are a smaller number of very large media companies, and so like DPG Media, and so we have a lot of concentration in the sales house, for instance, on broadcasting and publishing on the Belgian market, but also in the Netherlands we have somewhat more separation between broadcasting only sales houses and publishing sales houses. But where we see that, for instance, in the Netherlands, DPG Media has the same kind of reach than Google and Facebook on a weekly and monthly basis. So we're really at the same kind of magnitude playing, meaning that in both markets, we, but also some other players, are less dependent on open market. There is a lot of direct business ongoing, a lot of deal-based business ongoing, and so our dependencies on open market is diminishing and was already quite limited, which helps us also to make a more kind of aggressive approach into these environments where we are also, well, putting some of our platforms behind more kind of a walled garden approach, similar to like Google or Facebook or whatsoever, also launching our own ad manager solution and so on. So it's different compared to like bigger markets where there is a lot of fragmentation and where open market is key. So that's makes our markets a little bit different compared to the rest of Europe.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think one of the things obviously we've seen happen as the cookie has fallen is that first party data has risen. So, how do you see DPG Media positioned in the market, specifically in terms of that first party data era compared to others in the industry globally and also regionally?
Yep. Well, that's something that's for us very important. First party data, we have a program in place already for years, concentrating on gathering zero or first party data, whatever that you wanna call it, in both markets. Um, we know that in both markets, we are number one media company, but on the digital side, yeah, 70% of the market share goes to the global tech companies, and so only 30% goes to local media, like in a lot of other markets. But other than 30%, a large part is taken by us by concentrating very heavily on this first party data approach. And what we have done now since I think somewhat more than 2 years meanwhile is something what we call launching the trusted web. So DPG Media launched their own trusted web proposition. And it's an environment where we say to advertisers, look, we have a trusted web with a lot of reach, 90 brands. So a lot of people coming in, first. Secondly, all of this content is professional created content, 100% brand safe content. So no hate speech, fake news whatsoever on it. So the second thing. Thirdly, it has 100% addressable inventory, because everything there, of course, taking into account consent. So it's not 100%, a little bit less
Hmm.
for the people that give consent, but all consumers are addressable in onto our platforms, whether it's them using Firefox or Safari or whatsoever. It's not important because we have first party identifiers to identify them across the whole DPG media part. So they keep on being addressable. We have the data from all of these brands being connected together. So in Belgium, we have 30 brands, in the Netherlands, about 60 brands. And we ask consent on a group level, creating profiles with all behavioral, declared, intent data, geolocation data, which is coupled together into profiles, enriching those profiles continuously, and then allowing actually advertisers to yeah, make their own audiences based on all these profile data that we have available. Because that's the last thing that we did, is we launched a lot of own platforms, own tools, self-service tools for advertisers. Um, because in the past we had reach, we had data, we had brand safety, we have a lot of impactful advertising formats, but yeah, they had to go to third-party tools to buy it. And so
Mm.
we also launched our own tools. We have an ad manager tool, which is for agencies and large advertisers to buy programmatically our inventory on video and display. We have a direct product, which is for the long tail, small and medium advertisers that want to buy directly onto our platforms. And we have a data lab product, and the data lab product is to create your own audiences based on all our first party data available. Um, and so that's something that we already launched 2 years ago. And what's inside? Well, all these data which is available on our two markets in Belgium, since historically this broadcaster AVOD platform is there, for which you had to log in, create an account, leave some data, age, gender, postal code, these kind of things. We have a lot of qualitative declared data from a lot of logged in user base from millions of users on the Belgian market. We have the same on this. We have the one platform on the Flemish speaking side, VTM Go, the same on the French speaking side, RTL Play, both platforms with a lot of logged in base. So that's on one side. If you look to the Netherlands, we have more than 60 brands over there from a very broad range of industries. So we are active in automotive comparison sites. We are having job sites. We have financial services sites. We are having services that are into retail services, into fashion. We have specific magazines for women, for sports. So you see a lot of kind of sectors are supported there, and we bring all these data together. And all these data, we have the traditional approach. You can just buy in rate card segments. We have like 300 rate card segments that are composed like fashion lovers and sports lovers and 1835 energy intenders, whatever, all these kind of things. But then with that data lab platform, we also now allow them to create their own audience. Like I want to do 1826 people around the region of Amsterdam that have an interest in playing hockey and or are interested in Tesla and Polestar. Well, you can create such an audience in our own data lab platform. And then importantly, we allow advertisers also to bring in their own data. And so that's also where InfoSum, of course, comes into play. We have a twofold approach. On one side, working with data clean rooms, InfoSum being the most important one, both in Belgium and Netherlands. And on the other side, we also support advertisers, more smaller advertisers that connect their data directly onto their data lab on our data lab platform, similar to the Facebook CRM onboarding API.
Wow, it's a lot, and it sounds like you have and DPG Media are very much ahead of the curve as far as kind of that preparation for the cookieless future, that focus on first party data, that focus on high quality content and everything that goes along with it. But from your perspective and all that experience that you must have gained on that journey, what advice would you give to other companies that may not be quite as ready as you are for the cookieless future?
That's a good question. Well, it's of course different if you're speaking with like advertisers agencies or like media companies and so on. The first thing I would say is don't wait. Don't wait till the cookies disappear, because cookieless is there today. It's not a cookieless future. It's a cookieless present. More than 50% of people on open market are not addressable anymore. Um, and towards the future, all solutions which are appearing in the market, they won't have a reach that goes beyond 50% neither. So it's not that like the solution is going to pop up that will solve all your problems at the same time. Privacy Sandbox, interesting solution, but it only works on Chrome. It doesn't work if you're using Chrome on iOS, for instance. It only works for users that are opted in on your Privacy Sandbox solution, etc. So, of course, we are looking at it, and we also will be supporting advertisers using Privacy Sandbox. but it's like not the holy grail that will solve everything. Neither are universal IDs, which are dependent on having often like email or probabilistic kind of other solutions. They will have limitations. There is also concerns about informed consent. Do people understand when they're giving consent for all of this, etc.? So don't wait. That's advice number one. Advice number two is go test and concentrate yourself on those companies that have a first party relationship with the consumer, um, which are, yeah, a lot of companies. Like it can be of course big tech with their walled gardens, but it's media companies, it's retailers, it's teleco companies, the companies that have a direct relationship with the consumer, because at the end they will have the ability to ask the right consent to consumers. They have that direct relation, they have a trusted relationship. They can't just do whatever with the data of the consumer, because they really have to work on that trust. So go and work with them directly, because then you're on the safe side. um, Invest in the first party data for yourself, for your own. If you don't have it yet uh, in order, you just should be working in it uh, very soon, because all the results that we are seeing from using first party data are so much better than using third party data. We see very good results if an advertiser connects their first party data with our first party data to then target those users or exempt those users or target lookalikes. We see results of 3-4 times better than socio demo targeting or other targeting. So the results are there. So invest in your own first party data. And for some advertisers and media companies, and a contextual strategy, sometimes forgotten, but the contextual strategy does make sense. If you're a company more investing in purely into a media company, into B2B, or a very niche kind of company, you could consider going more into the contextual space, and vice versa. Also, if you're selling very specific niche kind of products, contextual does make sense, and the total return on investment can be higher than what you would expect, because you don't have to face all this complexity, I would say, around consent and first party data and so on.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think, don't wait, test and learn, first party data, contextual. It's really good advice for anyone out there. And I think what's exciting, and you kind of alluded to it there, is when first party data not just becomes the approach people have to take, it's the approach that actually delivers the highest performance and the best performance for those organizations. And that's when it gets super exciting from my
Yep,
perspective.
for sure.
So it does feel like we are finally close to the end of third party cookies. In your opinion, who's responsible then for rebuilding the foundation, if you like, of the digital advertising industry for a better future for all? And how kind of can we get to that?
Yeah, I think there it's a little bit like I said in the last response. I'm really seeing us evolving towards a first party data world, in which you will have a lot of a proliferation of kind of smaller walled gardens, be it tech companies, media companies, retailers, telcos, and all these kind of things, where advertisers easily should be able to connect their data into all these different walled gardens. And at the same time, you also want to have interoperability between those walled gardens and have some data sharing being possible, if with the right consent and the right data sharing agreements and all these kind of things. um, because it's all about this trust. And so I don't believe in a future where it's about recreating technical alternatives for the third party cookie. um, Consumers don't expect to end up in numerous identity graphs of ad tech companies they have never heard of. So let's not go into that direction, but focus really on to the ones that have that first party relation with the consumer, because at the end that will stand. And then you need data clean rooms, for instance, to connect these walled gardens together, to connect between advertisers and the different initiatives that are taken. And so that's really important. I'd also believe that data clean rooms which are also neutral and independent of being an at the same time an ID provider or an identity graph provider, that's crucial to connect also these walled gardens together. You don't want a company that at the same time connects your data with another company data, but also has their own kind of preference for upgrading ID graphs and so on. That's not what we want and what we like. And so therefore also everything around kind of universal IDs, we're not using them. We're not exposing universal IDs in bit requests. I think last couple of weeks we saw a lot of announcements of data leakages with IDs being exchanged in bit requests, DSPs decrypting them, and then all of a sudden DSPs starting to bid onto inventory they should not be able to bid, and so on. So creepy things, and that's something we have to be staying far away from, to our opinion.
What do you think then it will take for the industry to completely move away from third party cookies? I mean, is it just Google finally deprecating it in Chrome? What's it going to take for the industry to kind of fully move away?
Um, that's the big question, of course, eh? And I think people working in this industry have had this question for already a couple of years, and we saw the delays and the delays coming. Um, I think, of course, it's logical in an industry that have been working for 15 years in a certain way that there has been a lot of inertia in that industry, and that everybody likes to keep it like it has been working in the last years. However, people do not realize that today it already doesn't work anymore for more than 50% of the inventory. We see that people on Android are being targeted much more than on iOS because they are not targetable anymore, and so on. But as long as there is still something working for some people, apparently it's still okay for people to continue doing like they have been working in the past. Um, so that's a difficult one. I think also a lot of focus has been on more kind of targeting aspect and the alternatives there, while at the same time there are also some kind of things which are fundamentals like frequency capping, which is still lagging behind with third-party cookie alternatives. And that's a challenge. And because I think also there you can explain more easily to a consumer, well, we just want to provide you a better user experience. We don't want to bother you 20 times with the same ad. That's clearly different than saying, well, we are going to make a profile from your whole internet usage and then starting retargeting you across the whole world. That's two kind of differences we should look at them. And so you notice that that's not easy. There is not a one size fits all solution. So on one hand, we will see more use of these walled gardens, and with their own buying platforms like our ad manager approach, and then using DCRs to connect their data and so on. So we really very much believe in that one. Um, if we look to the open market, um, the nature of broadcasting cookie data in combination with real-time bidding, it's just very challenging from a GDPR perspective.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we all need to realize. And all technical alternatives that are created lack scale and solve only for a fragmented part of all of this. So yeah, that's a difficult one. At the end, a lot of people are waiting for what Google will do, and Privacy Sandbox for sure will be there. But as said, it won't be the solution neither for the whole market, knowing all the constraints which are now being put on top of each other and consent and not on iOS and using Chrome and so on and so on and so on. It's not the solution that everybody dreams of. So I think at the end, coming back to what I said previously, the realization by a lot of people that those retargeting the whole internet times are not coming back because that's just not GDPR compliant. So that you better concentrate on, on one side, connecting directly with walled gardens from international and local companies, making sure that you can connect your data into those walled gardens, and at the same time keeping your eyes open for contextual solutions and privacy sandbox solutions and maybe some other ones, but all of them will have a limited scale at the end of the day. And yeah, I would be wary of using solutions that seem too good to be true, because it seems too good to be true from a GDPR perspective. Often you won't be able to explain it to your mom, and then we are back into the beginning of our talk.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to your point, inertia is a powerful driver in business, and it can be difficult to kind of take people on that journey. But, to your answer a little bit earlier on, it's that don't wait, test and learn, invest in your first party data and other kind of advertising solutions. Is just such important advice
Yep.
for kind of everyone who's listening. So one of the topics that we've seen dominate the headlines in 2023 has been retail media, and that's been a topic across the globe that everyone is discussing. So what's been DPG's approach to retail media in 2023, and how do you see that space evolving in 2024?
Good question. Well, an important area. Like I said in the beginning, Belgium and Netherlands are a little bit behind on the retail media, I would say. Not on the retail media inside retailers' own environment, I would say. But if you more look into things like audience extension or media companies selling retail data, we are somewhat behind on what's happening in the other markets. Also, to some extent, probably due to the fact that, like on the media side, there is not too much fragmentation. There is a lot of consolidation happened. We also have very large retailers where a limited number of large retailers where also a lot of consolidation happened. So it's a play between big players in the market, which is also always a little bit more difficult to get started. And we see two compatible approaches. On one hand, we see retailers, the sales house there, selling audience extensions with their retail data onto the media, typically for trading budgets from CPG. We had a couple of campaigns running there in the Belgian market in last year, but to be honest, yeah, we didn't see a good return on investment, return on ad spend from the FMCG CPG side, because of also the fees being asked by N media plus data plus platform usage. At the end of the day, yeah, the part which went into the media buying was too low to really make an impact for most of these FMCGs and CPGs. So maybe that's something market specific. I don't know. I don't know the exact kind of fees which are being asked in other markets, but it feels like, yeah, the audience extension from retailers onto media, yeah, it's there has been a very limited uptake there. The other thing, media sales houses monetizing the retailer data themselves. What you see with the Channel 4 together with Sainsbury or an ITV with a Tesco and Boot. Very interesting approaches. Something we're also very eager on to explore. We have not yet been able to make a deal on that side, but we're very much looking into it in both markets, because I think it's yeah, we sell in the Belgian market alone 20,000 digital campaigns a year. If only 5% of those campaigns could be enriched with retailer data, whether it's category buying data, family composition, life stage data, all these kind of things, a lot of our FMCG and CPG clients are asking about it. A lot of automotive companies are asking about this kind of data. So next to our own kind of data points that we provide, or the data that the advertiser can bring, there is certainly an appeal from our advertiser customers into retail data, but it also has to be at the right price, of course, because otherwise the return on ad spend just doesn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such an exciting topic this year in every conversation we've had, right? And as you say, it's that convergence of retailers and media partners where they can provide that kind of unified solution that kind of allows you to reach your, it's kind of giving marketers what they've always asked for, right? Which is reaching the right customer at the right time with the right message, right? It kind of lets
Yeah,
them hit that
indeed.
hit that
And
sweet
also
spot.
make that the sales uplift attribution, closing the loop again. That's very interesting. I've been doing that with a couple of retailers and FMCGs already. Of course, it's today it lacks still a little bit of scalability and automation there, so it's something to invest in for the future, but certainly very promising towards next years. So something I hope in 24 we will also see much more happening in our boat markets.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on the future and what we've got kind of ahead of us. What are some of the things that excite you about where the industry is going and where we're all headed together?
Yeah, a little bit broader maybe than the pure identity part, but if I look to digital advertising and also my well, what we see happening. Personally, I'm having with this engineering background, everything what I see happening on AI, generative AI is very cool. I'm also leading a team of machine learning engineers at DPG Media. So we're doing a lot of kind of tests in this area. And so we are, for instance, experimenting with automated banner resizing and creation with better than expected results. So auto cropping or outcropping of images and so on. Because, for instance, in our platform Ad Manager, an advertiser can upload an image. We support tens of different formats of images. Yeah, it's always difficult for an advertiser to create all these different banners, all these different seamless formats that we provide, native formats. And so, therefore, we are now working on this automated creation and of these banners and so on, with very promising results. And we see a lot of these things also similarly in Google Performance Max, Meta Advantage Plus, where a lot of Gen AI and AI features are, yeah, boosting, I would say, the platforms. The big question, of course, is um, how much is the industry ready to work with all these black box AI solutions? Because at the end, we as a DPG find it very important to have this good relationship with the agencies, making sure also that an agency can provide value-added services on top of what they are selling on our platforms. And so, therefore, yeah, we very much more believe into supporting them with AI and Gen AI rather than make it a pure black box kind of solution. But very interesting environment, I would say, which is now unfolding on us.
Yeah, I mean, if there's been a second topic that's kind of dominated the headlines other than retail media this year, it's definitely been AI and kind of obviously the way it can improve or complement performance and how kind of and creative and delivery and everything in between. But I also think it's interesting to think about the privacy implications, right? And how
Yep.
we manage, you've spent a lot of time talking about privacy and how that fits into the DPG media world. And I think it's important that we kind of consider the privacy implications of AI at the same time.
Yep. No, for sure.
So, from your perspective, as you look, we're coming up to the end of 2023. When you look at the future, what's your predictions for the future of data collaboration, but also, as I was just mentioning, for privacy? And where do you see the industry being in 5, 10 years' time?
That's always
It's a big question.
the big question, of course. Now, I think on the side of privacy, we hope that the kind of debate in the industry goes back to like the spirit of GDPR, because we believe GDPR is really something important and should be about isn't your data being broadcasted, isn't your data leaking across the whole industry, and so on. And in the last couple of months, we saw 5 years after the start of GDPR, we saw GDPR going into a little bit the wrong direction, to my opinion. Like it's only about do you ask consent in the right way? Aren't you using dark patterns and so on? And that's, I would say, the full debate. After you have given consent, what happens then? If you then work with 300 vendors that enrich their ID graphs and do whatever what they have been doing in the last 20 years, which everybody knows, like that's not something I like, and you can't explain to your mom. We don't talk anymore about it, and so it's the wrong kind of discussion. It all goes about how do you ask consent, and is there a reject all button on the first screen, yes or no, and what is it leading to? What we are seeing across whole of Europe, you have an accept all or a reject all. And if you push the reject all button, just like Facebook now is doing, there is a pop up, please pay. It's not only Facebook, but also a lot of media companies in France, Germany, Austria are using this approach. And at the end, it's for a consumer, it's about paying with your data or paying with money. Where I'm not sure if that's really the right thing you want to do under GDPR and so on. We should be more talking about, okay, should let's make the difference between first party data and asking first party data for optimizing the consumer experience on your site, having relevant marketing, relevant content, relevant ads on your platform, compared to like giving away to hundreds of third party your first party data that then becomes third party data and all these kind of things. And that's, I hope we are going back into really the spirit of GDPR, discussing about, yeah, explaining to your mom what is happening with your data. So that's a really important thing. And because at that time I really believe that the only ones that can do something with data are the people that have that first party relationship. And so that's how I see the prediction of uh, going further. Yeah, like I said, I see a proliferation of walled gardens happening. A lot of smaller, bigger walled gardens where you need some interconnectivity with neutral data clean rooms. Hopefully, also some data clean rooms that are more and more interoperable. Where I know IAB Tech Lab also is working on these standards with the support of the likes of InfoSum and so on, because that's really important. You want to have walled gardens, but you want to support connections with advertisers, but at the same time you want to also support, if with the right consent and with the right data sharing agreement, some limited data transfers that you can explain to consumers, not to hundreds of third parties, but between advertiser one and media company one. If they have the right consent, yeah, this should be possible. So that's for me, like, yeah, something where we as an industry also should focus on, and hopefully also that we have this privacy evolution going into the right direction and not having these wrong debates that we're seeing in the last months popping up everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to think about, what privacy should mean to businesses, and privacy shouldn't necessarily be just a box ticking exercise that you do what you need to do to kind of to get by. It should be about, when it's the difference between putting consumers truly at the heart of everything you do, and being truly consumer centric, which it sounds like DPG Media has very much embraced that kind of customer centric, consumer centric perspective.
That's crucial indeed. That's for us a very important one to go for. Yep.
Amazing. Well, before we finish things up, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like us to cover? Anything we haven't touched on that you want to touch on?
Well, I think one domain for us is a domain on which we are going to invest more next year is everything on connected TV. So we have an important broadcast VOD proposition with more and more first screen viewing, but it's like a very fragmented kind of world. On one side, we have smart TV apps, we have our own apps, we have a website, there is casting ongoing, but we're also having, of course, still the telecom companies owning the set top box. And on their platforms, we also have things like addressable TV or our ad server delivering ads onto their set top boxes and so on. But so a lot of fragmentation. There is no possibility today to measure reach and frequency uniquely between what we are on one side showing ads on our own platforms compared to what we show on the set-top box and so on, while at the same time, yeah, it's the same campaign. It's often the same consumer who on one side is then consuming content via his mobile phone, and the next moment is using a set-top box from a telco. And so that fragmentation is something we really want to more and more tackle and work on in 24 in the Belgian market. And so where we see a lot of evolutions also in the UK, in the US, and so on. But we still have a lot of work to do over there to tackle that fragmentation.
So, I mean, you're not going to have a quiet 2024 then, is what you're telling me. You've got a lot going on.
For sure, that's certainly the case.
Amazing. Well, as you know, this podcast is all about meeting and spotlighting pioneers in the media industry, such as yourself, who are kind of changing the way that we use data to deliver better customer experiences. So, when you look at people you admire in your network or within the industry as a whole, who would you nominate for us to interview on an upcoming episode?
Very interesting question. Actually, I look from a Belgium and Dutch perspective, and I'm looking south. I'm a big fan of what Paul Ripard is doing. He's the commercial director for AdTech and data at Prisma Media, and previously also at TF1. Their business is a little bit different than ours. It's a pure publishing magazine focused, a lot of open market, but they're doing a lot of innovations over there, and so it's always inspiring to have a talk with him. So I think that's for sure looking south. Interesting. If I look north, then the name which comes up is Christel Jons, which is head of data at Schibsted. Also Schibsted in the Nordics. They are somewhat similar to what DPG is doing in Belgium and Netherlands. A lot of different brands, a lot of innovation, and a lot of great work by Christer and the team. So these certainly are two people that do inspire me on a daily basis to come up with kind of new data and ad tech solutions.
That's fantastic. Both amazing nominations, and we'll definitely be reaching out to them both to get them on the podcast. That'd be fantastic. Tone, thank you so much for being on Identity Architects, and thank you so much for dropping so much knowledge on us all and getting to know you and what DPG Media is doing a little bit better. And I just appreciate all the work that we do with DPG Media at InfoSum. It's a fantastic relationship. I just can't wait to see more and more come from it over the next year or two.
Thanks. Likewise, I indeed also believe that we're still on the starting point with everything we do on data clean rooms. We have already a history of like 2.5 years working together, and looking forward to getting more and more kind of interactions ongoing on the platform, both in Belgium and the Netherlands. So looking, I said it's fully in line with our strategy and the evolutions that we see in the market. So looking forward to it.
Thanks again to Tone for joining us and being our final guest of 2023. I love chatting with him and getting to know more about him, DPG Media, and the landscape in Belgium and the Netherlands, and also hearing his thoughts and incredible insights into the trends emerging as we head into 2024. All that leaves for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button so you know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands, but until then, thanks for listening.